Uh, so thank you very much, Naveed, for joining us. Really appreciate you being here. Just for, I think most of us are Sloan Fellows here, so everybody knows me, but just to say a word, I was previously at HBC, and before that I was at Citi, where I met Naveed, and 13 years of experience in banking, transaction banking, here for this 1-year Sloan Fellow MBA, which is a great experience, and it's a pleasure to welcome Naveed. I will introduce Naveed, but Sandra, you want to go first?
Thank you, Zeeshan. And thank you, Naveed, for joining us today. And thank you, other Sloan Fellows here today. I have 15 years of experience before coming to Sloan in the banking and payment industry. And my last 5 years, I was in Citi Innovation Lab in Singapore. And I have firsthand experience witnessing the innovation journey, making innovation mainstream in Citi. So very happy to have Naveed together with us today.
Great. And let me just give a quick intro and background about Naveed. I believe you all have seen the bio which I've circulated. So Naveed was ex-chairman of Institutional Clients Group at Citi, which is encompassing all of the corporate banking or wholesale banking, including investment banking, transaction banking, securities, and everything. And before that, Naveed was global head of transaction banking, which is called Treasury and Trade Solutions. It's around 26,000 to 30,000 employees globally. Its presence is in 120 countries, and I've worked in the transaction banking at Citi for around 8 years. And I actually met Naveed when I was an analyst, when I had training in London, and seeing him there, it was very impressive. And he was actually the first person I met who was from MIT and who was also a Sloan Fellow. And of course, that showed me, okay, if you have to be successful, maybe MIT and going to become a Sloan Fellow is a thing. And I'm lucky to be here. And it's great pleasure to invite Naveed here to give us all a speech and talk about his life, his journey, and how, his journey and career and life changed when he came here, and any advice that Naveed has for us. So the structure for today's session would be, we would have 15 minutes, which Naveed will give us a speech. After that, me and Sandra would have some questions, which we have gathered based on your interest, which was going to be around 20 minutes. After that, we will open up for Q&A, which is, all of you Sloan Fellows can ask questions directly to Naveed. So that's the plan. So over to you, Naveed. Thank you very much for being here with us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Zeeshan and Sandra, for a warm welcome. And of course, the opportunity to be able to speak to all of you. Where you are sitting today, I was sitting there about 30 years ago, and I still have very, very pleasant and intellectually stimulating memories of my time in Boston. What I intend to do is, my remarks would be actually in a couple of areas. One, I just want to give you a context as to how I see the world evolving. And within that, the kind of leadership competencies you need to make the world a better place. And then, of course, I'll talk briefly about my journey, and happy to address any questions you may have. So from a macro context point of view, as we speak, the world is going through major transitions. And these are really driven by economic, social, environmental, and technological factors. So, you look at things like monetary fiscal policy under stress. You have economic and productivity growth challenges. There are socioeconomic fractures. There is a major sustainability drive. And of course, pandemics and things of those nature. So this is the kind of transitions we are seeing are quite unprecedented. But let me pick on one, which is what is being termed now the fourth industrial revolution, which is really the confluence of digital, physical, and biological technologies. And it is fundamentally changing the way we work and relate to one another. And to many industry observers, the size, scale, and the scope of this industrial revolution is likely to be unprecedented in human history. So it has the potential to transform the entire structure of the world, economy, and our communities, human identities. And we are already seeing a lot of that happening around us. Now, when you look at these fourth industrial revolution related technologies, so you're looking at things like, you're looking at current and emerging technologies across digital, physical, and biological world, as I mentioned. So these are things like artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, autonomous vehicles, 3D printing, nanotechnologies, biotech, material science, energy storage, quantum computing, and you can go on forever. So many of these technologies actually are in early stages of development. But the thing is that they reach an inflection point very quickly when they work in combination with each other. And they actually create possibilities which are infinite. Of course, they pose a lot of daunting challenges as well. So mixing and remixing of these technologies are what really is dramatically changing the world. And of course, while there are challenges, but a lot of the transitions I talked about in the opening remark, the answer really lies into how we deploy these technologies to solve some of these problems we are seeing in the world today. And you can actually characterize the environment we're living through right now, that the world, if you look at the previous industrial revolutions, you will have ad hoc and inconsistent within that industrial revolution time frame. The changes and the innovation would be ad hoc, episodic. But now the world is in a state of perpetual motion. So this is not episodic. This is a continuous change. And when you are in a time like this, where there is a state of perpetual motion, oftentimes the motion or the change becomes imperceptible. And that is something which is of great concern to the business leaders and policymakers, because you see these incremental changes every day all around you. And then they reach an inflection point. And one fine morning, you get up and you see the world around you is altogether a different place. And by the way, we are already seeing all these changes happening. My point being that business leaders, policymakers, irrespective what your engagement may be with the society or economy, you need to be very aware of what is happening around you. There's a lot of noise, but there's a lot of very profound signals as to where the world is going. And this phenomena is beautifully captured by Ernest Hemingway in his novel, The Sun Also Rises. So there are two characters by the name of Bill and Mike. They're having this conversation. And Bill asks Mike, "How did you go bankrupt?" And Mike responds, "Gradually and then suddenly." And this phenomena has been playing out in corporate and financial world for a long time. In 1920s, the average life of a S&P company was about 67 years. Today is about 15 years. So you can see that compression on the lifespan of an S&P company since 1920s. Since 2000, which is just 22 years time frame, 52% of Fortune 500 companies have either gone bankrupt, acquired, or they cease to exist. So my point is that we are going through an unprecedented environment. There are enormous challenges, but there are also infinite opportunities to reshape the world, which works for everyone rather than just for a few. Now, what I think, in my observation and my long experience, the kind of competencies are needed to facilitate those transitions and lead those transitions or shape those transitions to address some of those challenges which I spoke about earlier. You need three competencies. One is excellence in whatever area of expertise you may have. You may be in medicine, you may be in finance, you may be in banking, engineering, whatever it may be. And that is a given. You need to have a level of excellence there. Secondly, you need to have a very good appreciation and strategic relevance and significance of these technologies. And the third one is leadership and values. Because if you don't have these three competencies and you don't have the ability to operate at the intersection of these three, it's very difficult to make those transitions. And what we are seeing today is that there is a knowledge gap with the business leaders and policymakers, because this over-specialization, which has served the world well over decades, that exactly has created a knowledge gap, because people are too functional and they don't understand what the technology does, or they don't understand that how to remove the conflict apparently, which is in people's mind, between the social good and the commercial objectives. And you cannot remove that conflict unless you have a very profound sense of where the world is and appreciation of the fact that they don't have to be mutually exclusive. And for that, you need to have a very strong value-based leadership approach, and I'll speak to that. In terms of my career journey, I'll be very brief about it, so we can leave a lot more time for Q&A. So, when I was growing up, the smart kids in Pakistan will either do medicine or engineering. So that is the decision you made at the 15, 16 years of age, generally directed by your parents or generally by the peer group, be it your extended family. That's the smart kids will become either doctors or engineers. But I had this sense at a very early age that that's not where I want to go. So then I made a choice, which was unprecedented. I said, I'm going to do economics, statistics, mathematics, humanities. So that self-awareness and then trusting your instincts, that's the path I want to choose, I think is a very important lesson. And everything I did subsequently in terms of my education and career, it reinforced my initial decision, and I kept excelling at every step. So the point I'm trying to make is that learn to trust your instincts and be self-aware where your strengths are and where your area of developments are, okay? Leverage your strengths and continue to develop where you think you need to have improve. Self-awareness at a professional level, at a personal level, in my experience, is the most important attribute which determines your success eventually, or in an enduring fashion over a period of time. So that was the lesson. The second thing is, the moment I graduated from the university, when I did my MBA from Lahore, I joined a bank. I simultaneously started teaching at master's students from where I graduated. So I built two courses. One was fundamentals of marketing. The other one was multinational marketing or international marketing. And why did I do that? It is that approach which I've maintained throughout my life. Can I make a difference? And when I used to be sitting as a student, I could see, in spite of the best efforts of our teachers, I could see the areas of improvement. And I said to myself, if I ever get an opportunity, this is how I'm going to improve. So I was probably the youngest lecturer they had, 21, 22 years of age. I built two courses, and to my knowledge, in some shape or form, they are still being taught 35, 36 years later. And I learned two things: the joy of seeing people acquiring knowledge and developing themselves, and your own learning, the way you have to prepare yourself to teach is just extraordinary. So I developed that passion in academia right from that time, and ever since I've been associated with that. So that's the second lesson: is always, no matter what situation you happen to be, try and make a difference. Can you have an impact? And that is the second lesson. The third one was that, when I always had this desire to go and study internationally. So I had a wonderful career, 4 or 5 years into my career. And apparently I had no reason to go and pursue another degree. I already had an MBA. But it was that passion and curiosity that I want to go and be an international academic environment. And I think that was probably one of the smarter decisions I made, as inconvenient the transition was, from Pakistan to MIT, leaving a wonderful job, a great standard of living, and then you come and, you could get back into your jeans and your sneakers and all the rest of it. But with the hindsight, while going through at the same time, I think that was a very smart decision I made. And what I learned there, you can, of course, acquire as much knowledge, concepts in that 1 year you are there. But there are few things which stay with you for life. One is, at least for me, I developed a sense of curiosity. And curiosity, that you want to learn new things, explore new things, is a very, very profound attribute. When I was in Pakistan, the primary focus was how I'm going to pass my exam. And the information was not even accessible that much. But then I went to MIT, I developed this sense of curiosity and a habit of reading. And that's one. Secondly, you learn the sources of knowledge, where you can go and find information. And third, which is more personal, that it improves your self-image, self-confidence, that you are in the context of, in the company of some very smart people, very accomplished, diverse, pretty much in every angle. And you can relate to them. And you can feel comfortable in that company. And that is, I think, is also a very important attribute, that you need to have a self-image, which gives you the level of confidence that if you're not better, you are at par with some of the smartest brains around the world. And so MIT, my 1 year there was one of the major impetus to my career subsequently. So I commend you for whatever reason, the decision you guys have made, because it does reflect a certain kind of a person. who's curious, who wants to learn, who wants to do better in life. And so this is a great asset, and I think you guys need to continue to leverage it. The last point I want to make is that and there's nothing right or wrong, it's your own choice, your own instincts, your own preference as you mature about your career and your outlook of life. So I did not want to specialize in one area or the other. So typically in banking, you'll have investment banking or trading or whatever it may be. I wanted to become a broad-based leader. So I wanted to experience every aspect of banking as much as possible. So I started looking for opportunities where I could learn more things. So I did corporate investment banking, I did consumer banking, I ran operations and technology, I did product management. I moved from experience geographies, different products, and all the rest of it. And so for me, that was extremely helpful because even though it's banking, but generally speaking, the strands and the ingredients of your experience, broad-based experience, is very transportable. It's very transferable. So that was the so in all the way through at critical points in my career, not only we changed the business manifold in the right direction, but we also changed the market in a very significant way. So I give you an example before I stop. So in Pakistan, when I was working for the bank, head of the corporate bank, I facilitated working with the policymakers, regulators, to open up the financial markets, capital markets, and all the benefits, the rules, regulations, and all that. And simultaneously, we were the first bank who set up the financial leasing company. We set up an investment bank. And so the point here is that you are engaged in making the market or economy a better place, but simultaneously, that's also helping you. And that's what I say. In one instance, that's what I say, you're achieving your economic objectives, and you're also trying to make the economy and the society a better place by thought leadership or by engaging proactively with the decision makers and policy makers. And this is really the last point. I've been saying it for quite some time now, is that the last two jobs at Citi, like Zeeshan said, I was the chairman of institutional client group, but I was also building a practice, what we call digital policy, strategy, and advisory. And this was exactly to the point. Can we help policymakers and business leaders to think about technology and these transitions in a strategic manner? And one of the very profound concepts we developed, that where the world is today, the traditional methods of managing an economy like monetary and fiscal policy are clearly under stress. So when the world is changing to the extent it is, you need also new tools in addition to your existing tools. So we built what we call digital policy as a complement to monetary and fiscal policy as the third tool. And I can send a report to Zeeshan and he can share with you. It's very profound. It's very unique. And you don't have to go through the entire report, but you can get, first few pages, you can really get a sense what we are talking about. And this is exactly to my earlier point that if you have to be successful, you need to be, obviously, you're an economist, banker, whatever. but you need to have a very good understanding strategically how you're going to use technology to address some of these challenges and leverage the opportunities. And then, of course, I can also send you a link to my podcast as part of the Center for Responsible Leadership. It will give you a greater window into how I think about leadership and what kind of values we need to pursue to make the world a better place. And the last job, the job before the last, I ran this transaction banking business, and we changed the direction of Citigroup. If you look at, it's the most valuable business in the industry and the company today. When I left, it was 11 billion in top line, $4 billion net income, and price earning of 30 to 35 if it was a standalone company. But more importantly, I would encourage you to go and listen to the February last year's Investor Day presentation by Citi. And this is unprecedented, a bank which is so heavily weighted towards investment banking and trading businesses, did not even showcase trading and investment banking. They're all good businesses on a standalone basis. So the transaction banking business was the one they showcased, and then everything, the entire business model was built around it. And you can even Google now, our CEO and CFO talks about transaction banking. And this is not a well-publicized story. I teach that in my lectures at Imperial, but it is a exceptionally a good case study that how you find in all these different changes, how you find an opportunity, what I call your unequal moment, recognize it, and how do you position yourself to change the game. All right, so anyway, I'll stop there, and I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Naveed. This was very, very insightful. And look, I can, of course, relate to a lot of what you talked about. When I was at Citi, I could see the rise of transaction banking and how we position in the market as well. And so all of this resonates really well. So now we will move on to some of the questions that we had been gathering from Sloan Fellows. I think some of them are quite interesting. So this is under the heading of your experience as a Sloan Fellow when you were there. So the questions basically are, I think the first one you already talked about, which was how did it impact your career and life? You mentioned that it changed, it gave you the confidence, et cetera, and we've seen. The other question that we have was around what advice you would have for Sloan Fellows. As you know, we are all graduating in May. So any thoughts on that?
So I'll say something very simple. Each one of you are very accomplished. That's why you are where you are. And obviously, it's a great opportunity for you to pursue your intellectual and academic pursuit. But then never underestimate, that's the advice I want to give, the impact you can have on the world. And why do I say that? I can make the argument in multiple ways. But the thing is that equipped with the experience and the knowledge and that degree, your approach to life is that, can I make the world a better place? And I know it's a cliche, and all these cliches get beaten down, but they never lose their meaning if you really understand the underlying substance of it. So trying to make the world a better place where you can deliver a great economic outcome, but you also demonstrate your focus on the societal, and like I said, they are not mutually exclusive. All right. The other thing I would say that don't underestimate the sphere of influence you have. You know, what they call the shadow of the leader. If you have the right value system and you demonstrate the right leadership qualities, you can cast that shadow so far away that you probably will not even notice. And that's what I've always tried to do in my own leadership approach and how I thought about it and how I teach leadership at Imperial. So while the world is challenging, but I think the opportunities are enormous. And I think you are on the right point in history, provided you recognize what your opportunity is. So therefore, don't underestimate your impact professionally as well as from a leadership point of view. And have a well-grounded value system which others can learn from. And there are no shortcuts. And eventually, you know, in my view, people who have the right value system and also have the focus on helping others and their development tend to succeed in a more enduring fashion than the folks who try to, you know, find shortcuts.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Naveed. So I will now let Sandra ask questions. She has some questions around innovation, and then if there's some time more, we'll ask around some leadership. Thank you.
Hi, Naveed. I really am very impressed by the understanding that you have and how you lay out the compression of SME life, you know, from 67 years to 15 years now. And you mentioned the 3 core. I do want to follow up on the 3 core capabilities that you mentioned. And one of them, very key, is leadership and values. I do want to ask, what are some of your values as a leader, and how have those values evolved over time?
Yeah. So I'll it may become a little long-winded. It's important, so I apologize for that. The way I think about leadership, I build this model, and then I'll talk about my sort of principles. Is what I call a mutually, the thing is the human beings do relate to a structure in terms of remembering things. Otherwise, it becomes really the words, and you can use as many words in describing the leadership as you like. And in my long experience, and when I started teaching, I said, how do I actually present it in a manner that people can relate to it, and it becomes part of their mental print. So I said there are 4 leadership stacks which are mutually reinforcing, or there are 4 components of a leadership stack mutually reinforcing. The foundational one is your moral conscious, the ability to differentiate between right and wrong. I will not develop on it, is understood. Secondly, your value system need to be deeply grounded in your moral conscious. So this is your integrity, your credibility, whether or not you genuinely believe in diversity, things of those nature. And then is your personal disposition, what kind of a personality you have. You're imaginative, you're self-aware, do you have humility, resilience? And then finally is your functional or your technical competence, which could be, like I said, medicine, economics, finance, engineering, whatever. And so let me just say that moral conscious is your foundation. And remember, anything you want to build, first you focus on the foundation. Then is your value system, which need to be grounded in your moral conscious. Then is your personality disposition, and finally your technical skills. The bottom 2 builds your character as an individual. The top two determines your effectiveness in an organizational context. Okay, now let me try and make it a little more real for you. So let's say about in early 1900s, or if you were to ask an engineer to build a tall building, they will build a very rigid structure. You ask the engineers to do that today, they will, what I call, build a very firm structure, but it will have a flexibility on the top to withstand the external shocks. And the top, as you know, using the counterweights, engineers will know, can move 1.5 to 2 feet either way at the top of it. So this is exactly my point, that you have a very solid foundation, firm foundation of your moral conscience and your value system. And then your personality disposition and your technical knowledge about your area of speciality enables you, without compromising your moral conscience and your value system, to navigate the complexity of the modern professional life. So this is firm, but some flexibility. Now, in terms of, I'll very quickly go through how I have always thought about, and there is nothing more important if you really want to change the culture and demonstrate the right values, is that you lead by example. And we see a lot of times there is inconsistent demonstration of value systems, inconsistent manifestation of behavior. So my first one, always I made it very clear that trust is the most important in a teamwork, the trust. So I would always say, you never have to second guess me. Very clear. How many times we run into situation, which is your moral dilemma, that, whether I trust my boss or I trust my peer or I trust somebody else, that is so unproductive. It creates so many organizational issues which really impedes the progression. So you never have to second guess me. I say what I exactly mean. Empathy, be tough on issues, not on people. It's a very important lesson and value I had, because in the modern business world, being empathetic, being soft on people is considered to be a weakness. Actually, we have proven the point. I ran transaction banking for 10 years, and the outcome we created was based on these values, because you cannot treat people in cogs in the machine. They are human beings, they have families, they have personal lives. Yes, of course, you have to be demanding. You should help people develop. But when an issue comes in, focus on issue, be very aggressive in managing it, but don't start attributing blame. Of course, later on, you can have a conversation, give the guidance, development, or credibility. No divergence between what I say and what I do. I used to say in my town halls, in every forum, that if you ever see a divergence between what I say and what I do, call me out publicly. Collaboration, attribute credit, not blame. In my 10 years, there was not a single person who ever came to me and blamed somebody else, because I would not entertain that. However, if somebody has done a good job in certain area and he or she comes and say, well, we have done this great thing, but part of the credit goes to this person, I will double the credit of that person who is attributing that credit. Optimism, tomorrow will be a better day. You're going to have ups, you're going to have downs. And this is a quality of resilience. Diversity appreciated in all its shades. And by the way, diversity is not a social issue. Firstly, it's an economic issue, and then it becomes a social issue. Okay, it goes the other way, unfortunately. We think in other ways, and I have lots of examples in my career, which I can give you why I thought it had a huge, tangible, measurable economic impact if we were to pursue diversity. Equality, treat everyone the same. Never create optically or practically inner and outer circles. Never. Treat everyone the same. And finally, every moment, every interaction, every step is an opportunity to make a difference to your company, to your client, or to somebody else. And I did not listed these things because I was going to come and talk to you guys. I have practiced this all my life. And if you build your personality and your brand, your leadership style around these things, trust me, it gives you such a massive momentum in progression, and it also protects you when the going is not good. Okay, so that's my long-winded answer, but I thought, it's important that I share that particular aspect because I can't teach you the technical side. You guys are a lot more accomplished than I am. But the leadership thing, which really comes out of experience, and if you have those values, trust me, if you have 100 people, they'll perform at the level of 120, because I'm sure you observed how much resources, intellectual or otherwise, we squander because we don't have the right value system. Okay.
Thank you very much, Naveed. And I really appreciate your sharing. And I've seen it firsthand in Citi, how you handled, progressing with the values. I want to follow up with one more question about the 3 core capabilities that you mentioned, which is very closely related to innovation. And then we'll move on to Q&A. So the question that I have is, you mentioned appreciation and strategic relevance and significance to technology. A lot of us are moving on to different corporates, will be leaders in there. And as a leader, how do you suggest that we infuse the culture of appreciation of technology into our organizations?
Yeah, so there are many different ways of doing it. The first thing is that technology or innovation should not be just the responsibility of a certain functional organization. It should be how you do business on a day-to-day basis. So first of all, you have to take the mystery out of innovation. That innovation generally is conceived or perceived to be something which is groundbreaking. It doesn't have to be. So you can make it very simple, and the definition we pursued for a long time was to say innovation is about creating economic value, directly or indirectly, economic value for your clients directly or indirectly by application of a new idea. It could be a customer service, it could be a process improvement, it could be a better pricing mechanisms, it could be new functionalities, it could be how you engage with the client, and it could also be product development. And the moment you do that, you make that innovation definition, which everyone can relate to, and make it understandable, and then have the right mechanisms behind it, like for information flow. So we built this portal, which was, all these 30,000 people could access everything about innovation. So that, by the way, also goes to the point of credibility, because if you just talk about innovation, I always used to get two reactions historically. Either people get intimidated, they said, it's nothing to do with me, it's going to happen somewhere in a lab or anything. Or they become skeptical. And they say, here is the flavor of the season again. We are harping on innovation. So we wanted to take all of the, and to my point of credibility, when you as a leader say something, you have to make sure you have thought through the second, third step, and you deliver on that. So we wanted to make sure that we deliver the operating steps so that the innovation could become mainstream. And no matter how small a job one might be doing, they could make a contribution to it. Okay, so that's the ethos, and obviously that will change from organization to organization. In terms of raising the overall standard of understanding of technology, I think we need to start changing the skill mix, start bringing in people who may have. So I give you one example. When we started looking at our skill mix, we realized that there are about 500 to 600 people in different parts of the organization who had an engineering background, but we basically hired them for their business or economics degrees, not for their engineering degrees. But where the world was going, we said technology engineering is equally important. So that was a dormant and lazy asset sitting within our workforce. So in future deployments, we started then considering those engineering and technological understanding in assigning the responsibilities. And then, of course, you have training. It's very important that you provide the right kind of, everyone cannot become a technician or engineer, but you need to have a good appreciation. What does this technology do and how it can change my mission, or how it can help me in delivering my objectives. So make innovation very simple, make it mainstream, make everyone understand that everyone can participate. Secondly, look at your skill mix, change it to the best possible way you can. And the third thing is continuous training. And then fourth is what I talked about, curiosity. I read a lot ever since I left MIT in the last 30 years. So I don't just read things which are directly relevant. I also think which at the time may look like peripheral. But the amazing thing is when you read these things, broad, what I call your ability to think horizontally, not just vertically, you will be amazed how it develops your mind. And you will surprise your own self in situations which may be completely alien to you. That how that configuration of that knowledge in your head can come to the fore and create a solution. So now there is no issue with being a specialist. You need specialists, but you also need people who can think horizontally, who have a broad-based knowledge, who can create different configurations or connect the dots between technology, leadership, business, innovation, processes, service, and all the rest of it. So those are the three components, I would say. But I would just encourage, and I think you should, and today, as you know, information is so easily accessible. You can be lying in your bed, you go into the iTunes University, and you can go to YouTube and you can pick any lecture in the world, or you can look at any topic in the world to learn about it.
Thank you very much, Naveed. This was very helpful, and thanks for answering these questions. Now we will open up to questions from the audience. So guys, feel free. Who wants to go first? Any questions? Shantu, you want to go first?
Thank you, Naveed. This is excellent information, and thank you so much for sharing your learnings. One of the questions I had was, if you see the current turmoil going on in financial sector and banking sector, and if you see some of the outlook for near-term outlook, what would you see as the biggest challenge in looking at the current economic environment, inflation? What do you think is the biggest challenge for next couple of years in financial and banking industry?
This is exactly the point I was making earlier, that monetary and fiscal policy, if you look at since the financial and economic crisis, and even prior to that, is yes, there is a supply shock in there and some of the other things leading to inflation. But in my view, monetary and fiscal policy is losing its capacity. If you look at high public debt, you look at how long the quantitative easing was, how low the interest rates were, and which was even prior to the financial and economic crisis, one of the factors which drove that was a cheap and easily accessible money, very low interest rates. Then you get into financial and economic crisis, and then massive stimulus injections, quantitative easing, very low interest rates, and things of those nature. And by the way, we have still not recovered fully from financial and economic crisis with all the regulations and what you see. And now we are continuously seeing, and then by the way, that also created many other side effects. And now we are seeing even before the Russia-Ukraine conflict, we were seeing the inflation on the up. Yes, that supply shock has aggravated that. But if you look at what the policy response is, the interest rates are going up dramatically, right? To curb the inflation. And what is the fallout? You saw what happened in SVB and all that. And similarly, we are creating another kind of a liquidity issue because people, rather than borrowing, because it's very expensive, they want to start withdrawing their deposits, which were sitting with the company. So rather than going into a lot of technicalities, in my view, the answer really lies that how do we think of new ways of managing our economies? The report, I'm going to send it to you if you read it. If you have a right digital policy, whereby you are digitizing your financial system and different sectors of the economy, greater transparency, financial inclusion, better collection of taxes, reduction in expenses of disbursement in the public and private sector, expansion of and financial inclusion gives you the access to credit. That credit then goes into spending, and the spending provides the stimulus to the economy and all the rest of it. So I think they will continue to do the traditional things, and hopefully it will start moderating inflation, and particularly if we see some kind of a lull in the Ukrainian and Russian conflict. But in the long term, I firmly believe the answer lies in technology. You can call it digitization. I've been advising many governments, many policymakers, and I also build the digital economy models for quite a few countries. And it's very clear that there is a lot of buy-in. But again, to my earlier point, that it is we don't have enough people who are very conversant in these things, who understand these things, but we are making progress in the right direction. So that's my take on it. I think there is a vulnerability naturally in the financial sector, and then that can potentially feed into the broader business system. But I think the regulators are doing whatever they can. I mean, you saw that Citigroup and JP Morgan and some of the Wells Fargo have put in around $30 billion on this other institution. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Naveed, on that. Thanks, Shanto, for the question. Anybody else wants to go next? Okay, Taiwo, please go ahead.
Hi, Naveed. Thank you so much for your time again. So we're now getting to the last 10 to 12 weeks of our time at Sloan. If you cast your mind back 30 years, what advice would you give yourself at that point in time as you transition back? And this is more of a tactical advice. And to set the context, the world is very different from a year ago when we got to Sloan. And a lot of the areas where we thought we'll find opportunity, things are shifting. So in that context, 12 weeks out, what advice would you give yourself?
Get home safely, stay healthy. You know what happened to me? The last day I was supposed to leave Boston, I used to live across Mass General Hospital, and I used to, walk through the hospital to come on the other side. I had my appendix, and it got ruptured in the hospital, and I was there for 2 weeks, and it was so I'm not joking. It's actually stay healthy, okay, and don't let your insurance expire. Sandra, what happened? Your insurance is already expired, but stay healthy.
No. Now you mentioned that I have to take care of it. Okay.
Yeah. Stay healthy. Don't let your insurance expire. But aside from that, I think, I genuinely think that you should start looking towards the world in a lot more optimistic, lot more confident manner. And you see, the thing is, the asset you have, which is your education and experience, leveraging it is a skill in itself. Finding an opportunity, recognizing the opportunity is a skill in itself, okay? And equipped with all what you have, that self-image, that education, that self-confidence, that's, and that acquisition of knowledge, you should be super confident, slightly short of arrogance and being cocky. I think you should be very self-assured. The second thing I would say, there is a general tendency that after this close 1 year, people tend to drift. You're very busy, you're geographically in different place, you are professionally in a different place, you have your own life, and then you get busy. Try and stay connected, because I think that's one of the very important attributes of being part of this community. And just think for a minute that how rich the experience and the background, this pool of cohorts is, or talent is, right? And then ask yourself that important. By the way, my mindset about becoming a broad-based business leader was after I left MIT. So when I came to MIT, it opened up possibilities. So MIT does open up possibilities, infinite possibilities to think about what do I want to do in the next phase of my life, okay? And then everyone may have a different decision or different way of approaching it. But I think you should look at the world. I mean, I can't give you technical specifics of but I think you should look at the world with a great sense of optimism and never lose that optimism. And my sort of final point on that is, which I have always pursued, and I think I often say that, when I was growing in Pakistan, I was doing my undergraduation. I used to think that if I ever, Citigroup used to be an aspirational brand. And I used to pass by a small branch every now and then. And I say, if I ever get into that bank and become the branch manager and retire, I would have achieved ultimate. And having gone through my career and what I achieved, I'm very humble about it. And a lot of that attribution is to luck. But what I say is that keep dreaming, but keep believing at the same time. And keep going. You just never know where you get to and how much difference you can make to the world. So this notion of, shadow of a leader. And I used to be very vocal in trying to inculcate the team or inject those values. And we were very open about it. We will talk about it very frequently. We will demonstrate that through our behavior. But my point was that when I used to do the town halls and speak to this 30,000 people, and not all of them will show up, but on a 4 or 5 town hall cycle, pretty much you cover everyone and then you send the communication out. And I always used to say that on average, if you look at these sociologists, they say, or psychologists, an average circle of acquaintances or your sphere of influence is about 550 to 600 people in lifetime, right? So you multiply those 26,000 with those 500, 550, and 600 people by demonstrating the right value system, leadership. Just imagine how much a difference you can make to the world. So I think as a leader, you have to have a narrative which you never get tired of communicating, not losing the substance of it, but you can continue to refresh the message to people through different examples which can resonate with them. So this is my kind of answer to you. Look towards the future, great optimism, despite all the, we see in the world today, and have a self-belief that you can make a difference and, realize your potential in the world.
This is great. I hope I would have. Thank you very much, Naveed. This was a great response, and I think the session has been amazing. If there is no burning question from the audience, I think we are at time. So we will thank Naveed. Sandra, you want to?
Thank you very much, Naveed, and thank you, all the Sloan Fellows who joined. It's a very fruitful session to me. I learned a lot.
Thank you for
Naveed, you have something that you want to say?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. I'm quite envious where you guys are right now, but I wish you well. And I'm sure you will go on and do great things in life. And I'm around. Zeeshan knows my contact. I'm also on the LinkedIn. You want to stay in touch, you're very welcome. And all the best to you and your families.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Naveed. And the things that you talked about, the podcast and other things, I look forward to that. And I'll definitely share those with the Sloan Fellows. And also, I think we are recording this session. I will share this with the Sloan Fellows as well, so that I think you talked about a lot of things in depth. I actually definitely intend to go back, listen, and basically write down all of these things because these are extremely insightful. Thank you very much for giving us the time. This is amazing, and it's great to know somebody like you who went through the same amazing program has reached the highs that you have, and you're a great inspiration. Thank you very much for the time on behalf of all of the Sloan Fellows. Thank you.
Enjoy and stay safe.
Thank you.